The reason no one should go into a cashless society, why no country should go into a cashless society, a society where all your money, all your spending, all your income, everything that you make and use to survive as currency is through electronic devices, through either credit card or implanted microchip, or a sort of barcode that you can scan from your body. So you can get a tattoo that's a barcode, and wherever you go, it is scanned. Or you can get a microchip in your body where you can scan it on something, or it is scanned as you go through your environment. So you go into Walmart and your body is scanned. When you go to pay for your stuff, your body is scanned. So basically, from there, if you have a microchip implanted inside of you, what happens is that your body has basically been invaded by a foreign object that has been placed there in order for you to spend. It could also be your ID, and it can also be a form of tracking you. If you're a person who, let's just say, doesn't agree with the system, and you're an activist, and for whatever reason the government finds to turn off your resources, they can, by turning off your microchip, by turning off your cash. See, because when you don't have cash, you can't save. And also, when you don't have cash, everything that you buy is going to be made by companies. It's going to be manufactured. It's going to come from a place that has been quality checked to the way that that provider wants to sell it to you. So they're going to provide these products, but they're going to provide their products in the way that they want to make them, the way that they want to provide them. So that means that people who make stuff, people who sell stuff secondhand, people who sell quality stuff that is no longer made in stores, but people like old stuff that, let's just say, they remember, or let's just say something that's very, very cool. Or let's just say you don't want to have what you're going to buy tracked, so you use cash. You know, sometimes they put regulations and restrictions on things that you really need, and you need cash. Yes, if you want to do something that, let's just say, is not the most legal, you use cash. And you shouldn't be buying things that are illegal with cash. You shouldn't be buying drugs. You shouldn't be buying weapons that are illegal. But what happens is that if you go into a cashless society, they're going to put regulations on everything. They're going to start carbon taxing you. They're going to start taxing you for everything. If you have broken a law that you're not aware of, or you had no choice but to break, or you were put into a situation where you ended up breaking a rule or spending too much time somewhere, you're going to get taxed, you're going to get charged. Now, the argument to put a cashless system in place where everything's going to be tracked, but a person doesn't want it to be tracked, the person or the system that is putting in that cashless system tells the public or asks the public, do you got anything to hide? You know, if you got nothing to hide, then why should you worry about the system? You see, it's not only about what you got to hide, it's about the kind of regulations, the kind of stuff that these people expect you to buy. A society like that where at any time, let's just say a bank can take away your money, or let's just say the government can take away your money. They put you in a situation where you can't live. Now, if you have to go homeless, what are you going to do? What if they made it to the point where you can't sleep on the street, where you can't be homeless, you can't be without a job, yet you're in that position? And then you're going to get in trouble because you cannot function. So what I'm talking about is something that's getting to tyranny, where people are pressured to pay things, people are pressured to live in certain ways, and if they don't comply, their cash is turned off. If they're not able to function in society, then basically they could be arrested for not functioning. You know what I'm saying? If a person doesn't want to join a draft to an unjust war, they are going to be forced, they're going to be found, they're going to be arrested. So basically, any way that you try to spend cash, or any way that you try to live your life, you can be targeted for something that you don't want to do, something that you don't want to pay, and it's imposed on you. And because you don't have any cash, because the only currency that you have is through a card, through something that's easily detected and picked up, basically any bank or any company that has the power can take away your money directly. So meaning that you can't hold off payments, you can't be flexible because you don't have cash. You can't save it. Now, a lot of people in the modern world, they don't just depend on cash, they depend on credit. They depend on mortgages. They depend on borrowing money from a bank. But still, they got cash. If anything happens, if they go bankrupt, if their world crashes around them, they're still able to use their cash. So when I said in the beginning of the video that, what if you want to buy something or spend money on something that's not exactly legal, or the way that you're going to do it is not exactly legal, I'm not talking about buying things that are bad, like stuff that's actually illegal. I'm talking about in the future, if you're in a cashless system and you can't buy food, you can't afford food, or let's just say you're eating food and all the food is genetically modified. And we know that genetically modified food leads to cancer, leads to certain ailments, leads to problems in the body, because when you genetically modify food, you're changing the structure of that food, you're changing the genes of that food, you're manipulating the genes of that food. And what that food does when it goes into your body, it's very unnatural. It begins to manipulate your genes, it begins to manipulate your recovery. Now, maybe not all genetically modified food is bad, but when you're eating everything that's genetically modified, nothing is natural, it's ultimately very bad. Now, the reason why I say that also genetically modified food is bad is because the people who make the genetically modified food believe in population control. That is an honest fact. The people who also make genetically modified food are into making a lot of money, are into as well control, power, and keeping that power, keeping that control. And a lot of people who make that genetically modified food have to meet quotas. They are people who are working for people who want that food manufactured. And mainly the people who make genetically modified food or started into that business were war companies. War companies that manipulated chemicals into making them very deadly, and to making them deadly enough to wipe out populations during war, off war, in peacetime, on the battlefield, off the battlefield, wherever. And now these people have invested in our food. And when I talk population control, I'm saying that our politics, that our companies, are not trying to always sell you the best products. Because in this world, there's a lot of people in politics and banking, the same people who want to make you go cashless, who are trying to create what you would call a new world order. Whether you're a conspiracy theorist or not, or a person who just looks at facts or not, whoever you are hearing this is hearing a fact. We are right now entering into a stage in humanity where everything that we do, everything that we see, everything that we hear, basically all the land that we walk on now is controlled. And if you're from a modern country in the Western civilization, you may think that you're free, you may think that you have all these freedoms, you have all this education, you know a lot of your surroundings, there's a lot of explanations for things, there's a lot of sources and resources that you can go to in order for you to study things, in order for you to learn things. But everything is controlled. All your information is controlled. Now the way that you eat is controlled. The way that you spend and live your life is controlled. If you want a mortgage, you're going to end up paying for that mortgage for a very long time, unless you have like $1 million down payment to buy the entire thing. And when you're in that mortgage, you're getting, let's just say, $600,000 borrowed to you, but you're going to have to pay a percentage of that back. And the longer you take to pay that back, the higher the interest rates go. Sometimes there's interest rates that change, where you're paying 2%, 1%, whatever you pay, and then it goes to 4%, 5%. I'm not an expert on banking, but I know enough that mortgages can trap you, and sometimes you need to get a second mortgage in order to pay off that first mortgage, and then you got more debt. And if you lose your job, if anything happens, if your economy crashes, or for whatever reason you just can't pay that mortgage, there's some options that you can go through, but those options are very limited. Those options are either putting you into more debt or making you go to bankruptcy, or at a point where you're going to get your house foreclosed. You're going to get whatever you have bought taken away, repossessed. And then what happens is that your life goes back to zero. So basically, you are enslaved to your job in order to pay for that mortgage. You can't just go anymore to places and build your own house, build your own cabin, because of course today we got different materials, different ways that our properties function. The infrastructure of our cities are much more different than they were back then, so you can't just build a property or a cabin, and if you do, you have to do a lot of modifications to it. You have to make it modern in order for it to be suitable for modern living. But still, we spend almost half our lives now, to our entire lives, if we can make it, paying for a mortgage, or at least that's what our future is seeing. That's what a lot of people are seeing right now. That's what the majority of people are seeing right now if they're paying a mortgage. They're paying it for most of their lives, most of their working lives. So basically, it's a system that's almost made to fail. And only the people who tough it out, or only the people who improvise the most, are able to pay that. So meaning that property owning and property building today, even though it should be easier to do and maintain, it's much more harder because of cost, because of expenses. There's big problems that happen with that. And the other thing that happens with that is that as you're a slave to paying for that, there's no possibility that your employment can change. And if it does change, you have to make sure that you have a better plan. You can't get fired. You can't lose out. You need family to pitch in to help you. So what I'm saying is, even with our cash society, when we go into credit, when we go into borrowing, when we go into money that we can't see and handle for ourselves and manage, what happens is that we begin to lose out big time. We're paying bigger prices, bigger taxes, bigger interest rates. And in today's world, where even your dog's regulated, you have to pay for a license. You can't just pay for a license once and have your dog registered. If it ever gets lost, you pay like $100 to get it back because it's registered or whatever, or maybe you can get it for free, whatever the service is in your local area. But nowadays, it's very mandatory that you pay a fee annually to keep that license up, or else you can get your dog taken away, or else you have to pay much more. A lot can happen to your dog or your pet, whatever you own. There's a lot of regulations on things. And as those regulations start to build up, a lot of people don't notice it because they're watching the media, they're watching TV, their favorite show for months. They got their heads focused on other things besides how our laws are changing. Every day our law is changing. Maybe not like where a law is being passed every single day, but there's always people behind the scene in our government trying to change the law. And they're changing the law to protect us, to do all sorts of things, to manage, to govern, but at the same time to control, to make more money, to make more tax, to put more control and invade your privacy more. Because it's in the interest of people who govern you and have power over you to keep you under control, to keep you in maybe the web that they got you in, or for a very good government to keep you safe. But very rarely in our history have we had governments that have lasted for more than 100 years that have really truly wanted to keep us safe. When it comes to aristocracy, when it comes to people who manage you and want to rule you, they're always going to try to push a little harder to take more from you. And especially when times are bad, or these people feel scared, or there's times of war, just situations where they need to press you harder, they will. And they always try to find ways to make that pressing much more easier for them. And sometimes they try to make it easier for you by keeping you happy, by keeping you entertained, by keeping you fed, by keeping you full of good resources. But the problem is that in our world, we have enough to feed people, we have enough to build properly, we have enough to have freedoms and have nature live with our world, like this utopia. But at the same time, we do suffer with overpopulation. When there's too many people, what happens is that our environment starts getting polluted. People's greed, people's wars, people's conflicts, people's need to expand and feed themselves end up taking away species. They end up destroying the balance that works good, and often that leads to war and problems. So when I'm talking about population control, sometimes it's also in the best interest, not just of politicians, but best interest in countries that the population remains at a certain quota, at a certain standard, a certain functional standard. But the problem with population control is that it means hurting people, destroying people, keeping them stagnant, where people are not influenced properly to feed themselves. So when you're trying to quell a problem with overpopulation, you end up creating another problem when you try to take away from the population, when you try to take away from people. It creates poverty, it creates squalor, it creates more policing, it creates a very bad environment for the people. So the way that I'm explaining this video, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything or exaggerate on anything. I'm just explaining it the way things are, the way we've always seen it in history, and the way we're seeing it now. But there's also a lot of evidence and fact that the modern world that we're entering, the way the media and the TV is teaching us to feel completely safe, not to think too much, to change your gender, to give up your faith, to give up your morals, to give up your family, to spend on certain things or to look at a life in a certain way, to go vegan or whatever. There's a lot of social engineering going on where our politics are focused on changing the way people behave, the way people think, the way people feed themselves, the way people take care of themselves, to the point where life expectancy is either going up or it's going down. But it's going up for people who maybe they want to keep around, but it's definitely going down for the people who they don't want around. So I'm talking about a system that is basically tyrannical. And what we're seeing right now with our banks, with our politicians, with our diplomacy, with the way wars are being waged, the reasons for these wars, the reasons we are told on the media for these wars, just the reasons in general for the way things are going today, and the way things are going, the way things are playing out, is showing us that there's a totalitarian system that wants to take control of a lot of land. It's like a communistic system. And right now it's mainly happening in our Western world. There's a lot going on in the sense of questioning racism, about acceptance, equality, about homosexual rights. And as well, at the same time that that's happening, there's a lot of censorship going on. And the wars that right now we're waging in the Middle East through our tax dollars or whatever the reasons are creating a lot of refugees. And what's happening that right now we are giving a lot of haven to this thing called Israel. For every Christian, for everybody who's familiar with the Bible or familiar with the Quran, familiar with Jewish religion itself, or has any knowledge on what's going on in Israel, there's a lot of prophecy around this. There's a lot of things in religion. But for the people who are just looking at this directly, without being religious, there's a lot of war going on right now in the Middle East, and there's a side that is losing, and that is the Muslim world. It's basically being destroyed. And right now, what our tax dollars are doing is that they're funding terrorism. Right now, it is a fact that our governments, that our intelligence agencies, through the resources that we give them, are manufacturing weapons and arming people with these weapons. They're creating terror groups. They're using their knowledge and their power in order to create war, more war. And the result of that war is that we are getting resources out of it, or at least the people who are sending our people to war, who are using our tax dollars for this war, are getting a lot of resources out of it. They're getting a lot of land out of it. They're getting a lot of buffer zones out of it. They're creating precursors for other wars. They're as well creating situations where if future war happens, or let's just say any attempt on the resource that they just took may happen in the future, they're able to defend it. They're able to have those buffer zones. They're able to have that intelligence, that surveillance there. So what I'm saying is that war brings a lot of profit, but it also brings a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. And if anyone who is very good with military, who's very good with politics, that's very good with strategy, I'm not just talking about anyone, I'm talking about groups of people who are like-minded, are able to benefit off that. And right now, with all this censorship happening, our governments, what they're doing is that they're shipping all those refugees that are becoming homeless in those Middle Eastern countries, and they're sending them to our countries. And then what's happening is that those people are flooding in, and there's a lot of terror groups that are coming in with, there's a lot of radicalization. We're bringing in a very huge wave of Islam as well, which in its nature, Islam, I'm not talking about just the people, but the teachings of Islam teach that you have to convert people. And if you don't convert people to their religion and their ways of life, that you can force them, that you can kill them, that you can manipulate them, that you can do a lot of damage to the populations that don't want to accept it. Now, Christianity in the past has spread by the sword, but if you read Christianity for what it is, if you read the Bible, if you read the Holy Scripture, it doesn't teach you to do that. So basically, it's been our politicians and kings in the past who have used Christianity as a weapon. And now that we got a different world, a more modern world, you're actually seeing Christianity being spread for what it is, or how it was before it began to be spread by the sword, because Christians were prosecuted. Just like Jews were prosecuted, Christians were prosecuted. And they were prosecuted much worse and for much longer And just for the fact of existing, just for the fact of becoming Christian and spreading to different lands. And Christianity before never spread by the sword. So today we're falling back into that. We're not spreading Christianity by force. The governments right now that are coming from those old Christian lands are completely different. They look satanic. They look like they got a different religion, a different purpose, a different way of viewing life, a different way of having culture and tradition. But the way of these modern governments is that they're not converting anybody and keeping them safe. They're basically manipulating and enslaving everybody. And today Islam, even though it brings a certain peace, a certain tranquility to the lands, once Islam is there, it takes away a lot of freedoms. It takes away privacy. It takes away the ability for you to be an individual. And how Islam is it's very aggressive. It's very controlling. And for people who are Christian or from these Christian lands, we don't agree with those ways of life. Those morals don't interest us. We don't want those kind of morals. So there's a lot of people that are speaking out against that. There's a lot of people that are challenging that. And right now what our politicians are doing is that they're saying that, we're being racist against these people. So it's not us, the ones that are going into the Middle East and destroying them and giving safe haven to Israel to spread and continue more chaos, continue more hatred, continue more tension, without being politically careful. It's just like a brute way of spreading its strength. And what's happening is that we're bringing all these people from Islam to our countries, and a lot of them have resentment towards us. That's what I mean about the terror groups and the radicalization. And a lot of those terror groups that we trained in the Middle East to cause that chaos, or for whatever reason, we train them, not us, not me and you, but our politics, our governing, our military situation that we got right now has trained those groups, and those groups are coming back here. So it's showing very clear evidence that our politicians are using those wars and those migrations to destabilize people, to destabilize us, but also start to gain control through that. Through that strategy, we are beginning to lose our rights, we are beginning to lose our freedoms, we are beginning to lose our awareness. We're focusing on these boogeymen that we're chasing around, and now they're here in our lands, and now we got to be censored because we're questioning it. People are being called anti-Semitic because they question the situation in the Middle East. People are being called conspiracy theorists because they're questioning genetically modified food. They're basically calling people primitive because they don't want to accept a cashless system. They're calling people hateful because they don't want to teach their kids from a very young age that they can change their gender, to not feel beautiful for who they are. But in order for them to do that, if they feel different or they talk differently, it's to change their gender, to be called by a certain pronoun, to be called binary, non-binary, bisexual, homosexual, lesbian, or whatever it is, whatever LGBTQ, which looks a lot like pedophilia because it is targeting our kids. It's literally radicalization. And why would your 11-year-old kid want to go get a sex change, get a doctor to cut and remove parts of his private parts, to have prescriptions given to them so they can change their voice, to stop them from growing their beard, or let's just say to stop a woman from growing her breast, from sounding like a woman, for being beautiful for who she is. And yet these movements are telling us that these movements are trying to make us feel beautiful, trying to make us change, and it's suddenly happening. It's all happening at once. So with all these wars, with all this kind of political situation, and at the same time that they're talking cashless and all this stuff, it's leading to a clear tyrannical system. And at the same time, our Facebook, you're sharing something on YouTube, and if you share something on YouTube or Facebook, and you type in a certain word or a certain name, a certain keyword, it is picked up by an AI system, an automatic intelligence, an intelligence that's artificial. And what it does is that it tracks what you said, and it can block your content, it can get you investigated, and everything that you share online, almost everything you share as well, everything that you share online and as well through your telephone conversations are recorded. And this is fact. This is not fake news. This is not someone trying to spread BS. This is fact. They're recording every single conversation that you make on Facebook, everything. It can be investigated at any time. You make a keyword, you say hammer, you say bomb, you say kill, for whatever reason. Maybe you're talking about a video game. Maybe you're talking about something that you've seen on the news. And automatically, a window is opened up where people that you don't know can look into that, can begin to investigate you, study you, see who you are, see who your friends are, see your private pictures, your private conversations. Basically something that is very ridiculous, something that no one needs and no one wants. So that's what I meant by going into a cashless society with everything that we're seeing today. It's giving clear clues, and it's leading directly to tyranny, leading to people, individuals no longer having control. And that's why people have to pay attention to a lot of those new age movements. You got to pay attention to every single law change that is happening right now. And if there's bad laws that are being put in, laws that are invading your privacy, more people should take interest in that and begin to say something. You know, let's just say that I'm a rich person. I'm a person, not just any rich person, a person who doesn't mind seeing the way the world is going today, who collaborates with the kind of people that do this. For me, I might have security. You know, my bank account might be private. My Facebook account might be private. My YouTube might be private. I may be allowed to share things that other people are not allowed to share. You know, basically what I'm saying is that if you're an aristocrat to this system, for this system, you know, you might not have to eat the genetically modified food. You might not have to live in the environment and expose yourself to things that are being given to the regular public, that is lowering the lifespan, that is lowering their happiness, that is making them dependent on medications. Because you got to remember, genetically modified food, it's altering your genes, it's altering your body, it's altering your immunity, your sex drive, everything, the way your sexuality is. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a lot of those culprits for making people feel like they don't want to be boys when they're boys is what's in the food, it's what's in the media, it's what's in the environment. You know, there's a few people that have a lot of control over our resources, basically have ultimate control over our resources, what we watch, what we're educated by, and maybe they don't like the way 95% of the population is. So what they try to do is that they try to manipulate the population. And when I look at LGBT, the way that they're targeting our kids, there's basically a pedophile agenda right there. You know, I'm not a person that's just trying to make this up. This is what everybody can see. This is what everybody's questioning. And right now, that same agenda that's trying to target our kids is telling us, you know, that we can't speak out against it, you know, that we can be censored, that we can be arrested. You know what I'm saying? If you don't agree with global warming, you know what I'm saying? So if they're telling your kid that they can't be you know, that they shouldn't feel like a boy if they feel different, but they're a male, what do you think these people could be telling us when it comes to global warming? You know, we see a lot of things called fake clouds in the sky that are made by airplanes that dump a bunch of chemicals, a bunch of metals, and a bunch of acids, and a bunch of stuff. Who knows what else they dump there? And it creates fake clouds. And now they're coming out and saying that this is against global warming, that we got to spray more of this stuff. But in the past, they didn't even want to tell us what it was for. And it's not just conspiracy theory when I'm saying that it could be more than global warming. It could be a way of tracking, radar. It could be new technology. It could be manipulating the weather, you know, to take away rain from certain areas and give rain to other areas. It could be to help people. But when they actually begin to study this, when people have come out from the military or people who have made investigations on what's being spread over our skies, they're seeing that it's very poisonous, that it's very toxic. People are beginning to link it to Alzheimer's and the spikes in Alzheimer's, the increases in Alzheimer's, where, you know, people who are hitting a certain age, they can't think, they can't function well. There's entire species of fish and birds and life and natural landscapes that are being destroyed. And when people investigate this stuff and they see the kind of stuff that's being poured over our skies every day by the tons, they're saying that the chemicals and the stuff that is being spread over our skies and is falling back on our environment can cause and is causing a lot of destruction to wildlife, a lot of destruction to our natural landscapes. And it's not actually helping global warming. Think about it. You got a really hot day and you're putting clouds over that hot day. What you're doing is that you're creating an environment that shouldn't be there. You know, you're trapping in that heat, in that environment. And at the same time, when you take away the sun and it's hot, you get a lot of potential for fungus growth, for disease to spread, for certain kind of creatures and bugs and things like that to spread and breed and overpopulate when they shouldn't, when there should be a balance. So basically, it's potential to create disease. And I'm not just saying this for nothing, because there's been people who have been studying these things and have went out, not just have been studying these things, but have been part of these things and have went out and publicly stated and said that this stuff is creating disease, it's creating fungus, it's creating a bad environment. It's actually warming up that area more. So what I'm saying is that it could be a weapon, and it most likely is a weapon, and in many senses it is already a weapon. It's killing people, it's giving people respiratory illnesses, it's being linked to Alzheimer's, it's being linked to the destruction of natural habitats, it's being linked to destroying the natural balance that we have with nature, or the creation, or the coincidence, as you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, from whatever religious or atheistic standpoint view. This is your world. This is the planet that you live on. And these are the kind of things that are being spread, and also genetically modified plants and organisms and all that stuff. They're breeding and they're spreading. They're populating our natural landscapes. They're replacing a lot of native species. Now, for a lot of people who study the Bible, Revelations talks about this, talks about the manipulation of man's genes, and it talks about that throughout the Bible. The reason why God had to destroy the earth with a flood once, because there was things that were here according to the Bible, and as well according to a lot of religions and a lot of tales around the world. So it's not just what came out of Israel or the Middle East. These are tales and things that have been told all around the world. But let's just say you don't believe in that stuff. Still, the Bible says that in the end times, and the times that we're going into today, or what looks like we're going into today, there's going to be a lot of this. There's going to be a lot of plagues. There's going to be a lot of destruction, a lot of evil, a lot of war, the mark of the beast. And basically, the Bible states it as fact that there's going to be a point where if you don't have the mark of the beast, let's just say a microchip or a barcode where you can spend, you can't buy or sell. That is according, right there, to the Bible. That's what the Bible is telling you. But let's just say you're not religious. That's what's happening. That's what it looks like we're going into. Actually, no, that's what we're going into right now. And so basically, we've been warned about this stuff. Human nature, psychology, everything tells us that when you allow people to hurt other people, to manipulate other people, to fraud other people, to hurt other people, to the point where they're gaining a lot of power, it becomes a sickness. It spreads. It becomes something that is bad. It becomes tyrannical. It becomes a bad situation. When you allow a gang to take control of your city, there's a lot of killing, there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of drug dealing. Now, what happens when our government is compromised by people who want to do harm? When I talk about religion and Christianity, we don't want that. Atheists don't want that. No one wants an end times to come, or destruction, or war. But what if I told you that a lot of the people who manage it, the biggest, most strongest religious systems today that are underground, that are Freemasonic, believe in a satanic system. They believe in the destruction of the earth, or manipulating man's genes, or for whatever reason they've seen, just like science tries to explain us, that you can evolve, that you can become better, that you can get superpowers, what the movies are telling us. Maybe those people that are in those societies know things that we don't. Maybe they know more about the Bible than we do. Maybe they have evidence for things that existed here that we don't know about, because these people have been hiding it. They've had the power. These are systems that are very old, very mature. They're systems that are able to infiltrate governments and things like that. So now I'm talking about conspiracy theory and all this stuff, even though there's a lot of fact to what I'm saying. In this video, I will admit that I am telling the truth about everything that I'm saying. When like all these comparisons, it's like these are the things that are leading up to it. But when I'm talking about these secret groups, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to. You don't have to sit here and take me seriously for every single word that I'm saying. But I do ask you to listen to this and take this into consideration. These are groups, very ancient groups that are very old, and they got a lot of power. They got a lot of resources. They got a lot of knowledge that they've stored. They got basically countries within our countries. These are people that create countries, that create wars, that start wars, that end wars, that influence politicians, influence business, influence technology, because they got a lot of knowledge, they got a lot of power. They keep their power and their knowledge secret. Now, let's just say if that didn't exist in the way that I just explained, it does exist in one form or another through our politics, through people who used to be kings and queens, through people who used to have a lot of power and lost that power, or when their countries collapsed, they left their countries and joined other powers, other systems, other secret societies. We do have that, and it is a known fact that we do have those kind of societies. But that's just an idea that I'm giving you of the kind of things that we could be facing as people. And that's why we need the majority of people to look into these things, to question these things, to influence politics, to influence the course of events through being aware, through being independent. And that's why you never allow your privacy to be invaded, your money to be taken away. Okay, maybe they're going to take away money because that money doesn't work. You should be able to buy and sell and trade and barter and grow your own food to survive. But when that system is taking away your ability to survive, it is drafting you for war, it is invading your privacy, it is manipulating your genes, your food, the way you think, your sexuality, your marriages, everything, your faith, that's when you gotta ask the question, is this good? But what if that system does what it does today? It uses the media to make us feel good. While we're losing our lives and our privileges and our freedoms, they make it feel good by putting on good TV shows, by making certain trends, making you feel a certain way, manipulating you, taking away the ability for you to think for yourself, and making you dependent. It's just like a drug dealer making you dependent on that drug. Sometimes you like the drug, but most of the time when you become addicted and it's ruining your life, you hate that drug, but yet you're there. But still, that drug had to convince you at a certain point. It had to make you feel good. And what I'm saying is that everything that we see is possibly not going to last forever in the way that we see it now. It's definitely not going to last forever. If you're a person who believes in the Bible, if you're a person who have seen history, let's just say, and you're not religious, you're an atheist, but you study history, you're going to begin to see that these systems don't last. Something always has to give. And especially when you got a system that is eating itself from the inside and you got a lot of tyranny on top of that, you got no respect. You got no future. You're going to see that those systems always collapse. Those people always suffer. Those people always go to war. All empires that have been big in history have always collapsed, where the majority of their people have always ended up suffering or paying a price or losing their lives or going to war or becoming slaves, being unhealthy, being well off to being basically nothing, starving, and possibly losing your life. So you see, in this video, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, or I'm just trying to tell you things the way they are, the way I see them, the way things are playing out. And also, I'm telling you something. You should be aware. You should take the time to listen and look at least how your laws are changing. See how they're going to benefit you. You know what I'm saying? Keep your children the way they were born. I have the right to say that. Yet there's people out there saying that you don't have the right to speak out against homosexuality in any way because you're hateful. They start bringing up anti-Semitism. They start bringing up Hitler. They start bringing up all these crazy things that you could possibly be. And there's a lot of people that know what they're doing. They know that strategy. But the majority of people that are reciting these strategies, these ways of thinking and bringing down another conversation and keeping people from being creative and open and alive are people who have been manipulated, have been convinced, who have been radicalized into attacking people when they want to be normal, when they just want to live a good life, when they don't want to accept something in their family or their lives that is going to begin to corrode their peace. So, anyways, guys, I don't know how you're going to take this video. I don't know how you're going to understand this video. But I decided to start it off with why you don't want a cashless society, why you don't want to go cashless. It's because that's almost like the last stage. With all this stuff going on, we can still argue. But once you're cashless, once your privacy is 100% invaded, your food is completely genetically modified, everything is out of your control. And you can't even buy food from other places. Like when there's regulation to the point where you can't live, you can't function, you're like a slave. In order to own a house, you have to go through a specific task that is painstaking as the kind of mortgages we see today, and the kind of tax that we're seeing for the future, to the point where we have no control, to the point where now banks have the ability to take away all your money, to where a government says that they can turn off your life because they don't agree with your political opinions, where you can be arrested, just like that Tommy Robinson guy out in the UK. He got arrested for speaking out against corruption, for speaking out against rape, and bringing out things that people should know. And what the government did in order to hide that corruption, or whatever they're doing, what they have done is that they have arrested this man, and within 5 hours, They gave him a 13-month sentence, basically without a proper trial. Now, a lot of people say that this guy could just be fake, a shill, whatever you call it, that just got arrested, you know, and is pretending to be, alt-right or whatever, go against the leftist narrative, just something to distract us. Whatever it is, whatever you want to see it like, whatever you think of it, there's a lot of opinions going around that way of thinking. For all you know, that could be just a young man who's very passionate about speaking and defending his country. And he got arrested and sent for 13 months to prison without any proper trial. And what they're doing is that they're banning the reporting of that. You can't say anything about that in the UK. It's only American news channels and other news channels around the world and people who have spoken out against that. Think about that. Think about that example alone. If that was applied to everybody that had a different opinion to the consensus of our politics. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the video. Till next time, if you want to subscribe, you can. I disable the likes and dislikes because, I don't care to see that. And a lot of people like my videos. Sometimes some of my videos are disliked. But I just took away that system because I just want people to see these videos for what they are, to be able to comment. You know what I'm saying? I don't need approval for what I'm saying. What I need to do for myself, to make myself feel comfortable, is be able to share this with other people and provoke some thinking. Because I don't want to go through a future like this. And neither do you. And it is in our best interest to be aware of things and one day possibly work together to change things the way people should. The way democracy, I guess, is supposed to be. Till next time, take care and goodbye.